Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists podcast, the podcast about all the nerdy things we enjoy. I'm Will, that's Blake, and today we're here to talk a little Exandria Unlimited Calamity, baby! Episode 3. Super hyped to talk about it.
I don't think I can do this.
Oh, you're out?
I don't think I can do this, man. There's too much emotion at stake,
Bro,
to walk through this episode again.
Very true. And gosh, I can't even imagine next episode, man. It's gonna be a heart wrencher.
Bring the tissues for sure.
For sure. And I mean, not to get too distracted right now in the intro, but I wonder how long it's gonna be. I mean, this one we're talking about today was nearly 6 hours, and I'm wondering if we're even in for a longer one to round it out.
I told myself it'd be a while to watch this whole episode, but I pretty much watched the whole thing on release night, and then the next day I watched the whole thing again. So
yeah, same
was
here
good.
Basically. It was.
So, but I digress. Welcome to the Pixelists podcast. We're going to be talking some Critical Role today, like my friend Will mentioned. And if you aren't familiar with the podcast, typically we talk about what we thought of it, our theories, what we think, where we think the series is going next. We usually pat ourselves on the back for things that we called from episode 1 that we totally nailed, and we ignore all the other things that we got horribly wrong.
Right.
So before we do that, we also do a little recap where we actually take our conversation. Before we do the conversation, we take a basically description of what happened in the show. I don't know why I'm explaining what a recap is. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it's 6 hours. So we're going to try to boil that down into as short and brief a segment as possible. And this gets clipped out into its own section. So if you're watching just the recap, click the link below. We do have the whole discussion. And if you have your own thoughts and theories, we'd love to invite you to join us in the comment section. Let us know what you think. So, having said that, Will, do you want to kick us off on episode 3?
Yeah, let's kick it off. And I guess we're actually recording this one a little bit earlier, so we don't know what the title of the episode is yet. But
right.
Episode 3 of Exandria Unlimited Calamity. So this episode picks up where we left off with Lucretia Hollow basically stopping the Ring of Brass as they are making their way to the helm of Avalier. And there's basically this confrontation right outside of the helm. And Lucretia is surrounded by and again, she's like the head of the necromancy, whatever. So she's surrounded by these skeletons, and there's also a bunch of people lining different roofs around. So the Ring of Brass find themselves surrounded. There's kind of like this really, what are you doing here? Kind of like, the tension is very high, but before combat breaks out, they're like, hello, Ring of Brass, what are you doing? And Loquacious is like, I'm here for an interview. They're all helping me. And basically, as this is happening, Magister Milas Friend walks out from the helm, but with an absurd investigation check by Saret. He notices that when Milas Friend walks through the doorway, that he kind of like adjusts weirdly. And the implication is that this is not Milas Friend. Instead, it is someone who is illusioned to appear as Milas Friend. And Loquacious is asking about this interview, and Milas is like, oh, today's not a good day. Maybe come back tomorrow. And Saret, noticing this, basically furls out his wings, takes to the sky, and at the sign of that, Lucretia immediately shouts something in Infernal, and boom, roll an initiative. And basically the entire first half of this episode is this combat. And, if you're familiar with our recaps, we don't want to bog you down with a play-by-play of everything that happened in the combat. So I'm just going to hit you with the highlights and the important things that happened during this. So first and foremost, Nidus is first in rotation, first in initiative. And he kicks off by flipping out this gold coin that he has, which summons a basically spiritual dragon. And I'm going to totally butcher this pronunciation, but I think it was Shah Korzan. And essentially, this dragon's spirit is of the dragon that originally inhabited the mountain that, the peak of which is now Avalier, hoarding its hoard of gold that it had. And that location where the hoard of gold was is now the Golden Scythe, of which, of course, Nidus is the guild master and the dragon of Avalier. So every dragon of Avalier, this is passed down to them, this dragon spirit. And so he summons that, whips in, combat begins, and he basically first and foremost goes for this Milus friend and attacks him. And because of that, he drops concentration, and so this illusion dissipates. But for the sake of clarity, I'm just going to keep referring to this creature as Milus friend, probably. But the illusion dissipates, and instead is a true devil. It's 15-foot tall, horned demon, basically, a being that has not walked Avalier in any of these people's lifetimes before now. So combat ensues. Lucretia is barking out orders in Infernal, and every time she takes a turn, at the end of her turn, she basically goes invisible, only reappearing when it's her turn to go again. Combat ensues. Xerxes, our pal daddy himself, is unleashing some mega damage with his divine smites and nat 20s on these demons and fiendish creatures that we have in this battle, and just basically pumping out some absurd damage. And during this, Lucretia yells, again in Infernal, that no one in the party can understand except for Xerxes, who doesn't even really realize that he's understanding, or later in this combat, speaking Infernal. But he understands that she yells out, Zartaza, like, go get the blood of the chosen. And they're like, blood of the chosen. And then this new figure appears on the battlefield. It's this beautiful woman with a porcelain face, and again, going to butcher pronunciation here, but I believe the race of what she is called a Erinyes, or something to that effect. Basically kind of this demon-esque, beautiful woman. Armored, weapons, flies straight for Xerxes. Tries to take some attacks on him, but they're all deflected, thanks to that protection of good and evil spell that Asmodeus put on Xerxes. And at seeing this, she just like pauses and is like, it's beautiful. And combat continues. There are some mages lining the rooftops. Two of them drop their invisibility that they had and rush towards Seret. One of the mages is empowering the other to impose disadvantage on Seret for the detect thoughts that the main casting mage is doing. So he runs up, slams his head against Seret's head, and says, the tools of Vespin Chloris, and cast detects thoughts, invades his mind, successfully does so, and as soon as that finishes, he basically turns and runs away, jumping off the nearby tower. More enemies are arriving in this conflict, called the Canalfi, who had basically been hidden around the area waiting for things to pop off. Another big moment is Laren reverses gravity on like a big cylinder of the combat, and everyone gets lifted 100 feet into the air, including Lucretia and also Nidus, who is still on his dragon, but they're being grappled by this massive hand. So all of them go flying up. Nidus, however, is able to free himself and his dragon, and then successfully grapple Lucretia Hollow with his dragon, and then just basically starts speeding towards his friends. But this true devil, Milus' friend, jumps up, basically smashes him, is able to kill the dragon, which causes Lucretia to be freed, and everyone to plummet, but the devil grabs Lucretia. And Patia casts Slow Fall on Nidus so that he doesn't, fall to his death. It's around this time that both Xerxes and Laren get a call on their little bracelets. Xerxes is being told that, hey, the city's under attack. The Eldritch batteries are being sabotaged. And Laren is called by Callum Staffright and is told the same thing about the Eldritch batteries, but also that the Arboreal Calyx is requesting 30% of the reserve energy. But this like stopgap is preventing that from being fulfilled. So Laren says, hey, kill the stopgap. So he does. And when that happens, the devil and Zartaza, the Erinyes, just immediately begin to cough up blood. So they're like, hopefully that was a good thing. So in this time, Xerxes speaks with Zartaza a bit again, and he's like, hey, and again, he's speaking in Infernal without even realizing it. He says, this was not the deal. Tell your lord to stand down. The people here are not to be harmed. And she replies to him, bring him and we'll honor this. And he's like, this isn't over, but he leaves her and flies toward the devil and just again obliterates him with these divine smites and stuff, eventually getting the how do you want to do this. And as he's doing the killing blow, Brennan describes to him that he hears a voice in his head that says Xerxes. And he can't quite place it, but he knows it's familiar and proud. He then turns back to Zartaza, who stabs him, and she pulls out her blade, now covered in his blood, and she's like, remember my name, Zartaza. It's been an honor, and it would be an honor to serve you at your side. And now, having what she wanted in his blood, she flies away. Combat. Laren drops the gravity spell, so all the rest of the people up, fall, most of them to their death. She then grabs Loquacious and dimension doors away toward the nearest Eldritch battery in order to protect it. Nidus casts Detect Thoughts on one of the nearby mages in order to glean some information, but he can't really process what he learns until after the combat. And finally, Paisha really wants to take out Lucretia, but she's invisible. She's gone back to being invisible between her turns. So Paisha decides to hold a spell, the spell Resilient Sphere, for when she can see her next. Sarret rushes to the helm to investigate what's going in. He kind of leaves the battle. He's like, I'm just going to go in there, look. He finds Akami Ro dead, her throat slit, and the helm basically completely destroyed. So Avalier is essentially unable to alter its course. Lucretia then appears next to Paisha and is like, I always hated you. And she's attempting to cast Circle of Death. But again, Paisha was holding a spell for this. So Paisha is attempting to cast her held spell, the Resilient Sphere. But Lucretia attempts to counterspell that. But Xerxes counterspells her counterspell. And so now we have this Circle of Death versus the Resilient Spear going off. And Brennan homebrews this interaction and basically has them roll a contested Arcana check, of which Marisha wins. So how this plays out is Paisha's Resilient Sphere encapsulates Lucretia as she's casting Circle of Death. So this wide Circle of Death spell instead is trapped in this sphere with her, and it basically just disintegrates her. She's a skeleton, instantly dead, and that's the end of Lucretia Hollow.
That's so cool.
Super cool. And with that happening, basically everyone else is like, oh shit. So the rest of the Canolfi and everyone else begin to flee. A few of these mages surrender, but Nidus is having none of that. He's like, there's only one response to mutiny, and he basically stabs them both in the heart. And that's where we go to break, kind of with the combat ended, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, this is like after 3 hours, by the way. Like,
yeah,
this is insane. The number, just real quick, the number of rolls they had to make in this fight, unfair, not unfair rolls, but like rolls that were not in their favor, and then them making it, like the counterspell had to be below an 8 for Lucretia, and she rolled a 4. Like that kind of stuff was insane. But if you enjoyed the first half, the second half is going to wreck you. The party basically they don't come back together, but like everyone comes back to the table, and Brennan mentions like, yes, these batteries are on their attack, and everyone has to roll a d20 to see which of the batteries, and these are the batteries that kind of, from what I understand, keep like the city powered and presumably maybe even keep the city afloat.
Yeah.
There's 12 across the city. They all roll. Only one of them rolls poorly, and only one battery goes down. And the party kind of self-congratulates, like, wow, we're really good at protecting these batteries. And it's implied that like the city guard is out and about, like protecting the city as they can.
Yeah.
With the batteries, with combat seemingly subsided and like the assault also seemingly stopping briefly, Loquacious and Laren are actually going to make their way to the Meridian Labyrinth. And it's in this process. Let me grab my notes real quick. It's in this process that in this brief lull, Sarret's going to ask Xerxes about speaking Infernal, because Xerxes during the combat had basically been like, this wasn't part of the deal, referencing his conversation with the Lord of the Hells in the previous episode, but he said it in Infernal, didn't realize that. And so Sarret asks him about that, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, man. And then Sarret also asks Nidus about, hey, in the Herald's Tome, which the Herald's Tome is inside of the Golden Scythe, basically says, hey, what's up with this file on Evandrin that was empty? And again, doesn't really get any answers. Sarah, the master investigator, just can't seem to wrap up these loose ends. Meanwhile, Loquacious and Laren are having a conversation on really what exactly Laren's plan is. And Laren's talking about it's about 2 a.m, and she's like, we're only a few hours away from landing on Kathmora for this apogee solstice happening. It's my last chance. Like, as soon as we get there, this plan of going to other planes is going to happen. And Loquacious is really bothered by this. He was bothered in a previous episode. He's bothered again now. And he's kind of like, hey, what, like, have you thought about this? Have you thought this through? Like, have you considered the fact that, like, the Archsept, like the leaders of the city, that they'd consider you doing something treasonous? Like, you haven't even asked anyone if they'd want to. And Laren is so confident. Terrific acting, by the way, by Bria Yengar, who's like, this is the right decision. This is what the Age of Arcanum stands for. It's what Avalier stands for. Like, this is something that has to happen. So, also because of these attacks that have happened on the city, Loquacious knows that some kind of report needs to go out, and he's like the head reporter guy, So, but he also wants to protect Laren and protect Laren's legacy, and so he basically sends out a report that says there's been a disturbance. Dean Hollow has caused this disturbance. I can't share more, but just sit tight and we'll have more information basically in the morning. And then separately, he records on this sort of like, I think it was like a Final Fantasy memory crystal or something.
Yeah.
He records like this personal, tape recorder, like Last Will and Testament kind of thing. And he basically says, of all the crazy things that happened, I want everyone to know that there was one person selflessly trying to protect the city, and that was Laren. Laren did that, and I'm also giving my resignation from the Herald's Tome and the voice of the Sept, or whatever it is. And there's some really great, basically the two of them, despite being divorced, have this really wholesome reunion moment of like, we still love each other. Laren basically says, hey, I'm sorry I never trusted you. And it's really great. But anyway, the party all make their way to the Meridian Labyrinth. Paisha and Xerxes share this moment where Paisha reveals that Xerxes came to see her, and he's like, yeah, of course, like I remember coming to see you, and because he basically says, I came to see you about healing Evandrin, but we couldn't figure it out, and so I just went on my way. And she basically reveals that that's actually not what happened, and Brennan reveals that Paisha cast Modify Memory on Xerxes, and his memory of the events is not accurate. And so Xerxes is shocked by this. He casts Zone of Truth and purposely fails, and he encourages his fellow members to purposely fail. Nidus and Laren do not. However, I don't remember if Loquacious did. I know Seret purposely failed.
Wait, I think Nidus purposely failed. It was
okay.
It was Quay and Laren that
Thank you.
Not,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah, and Nidus actually gets pretty pissed off at Xerxes. It's like, we don't have time for this. Like, I get what you're doing, but like, we don't have time for this. And Paisha basically says, hey, do you want to know what happened? And Xerxes is like, okay, yeah, tell me. And so she restores his memory and basically reveals that Xerxes came to her out of options. What can you do to help Evandrin? And she basically found druidic magic, sealed away forbidden magic. I took it as some kind of like lore spin on like basically the resurrection spell, and that they cast it and it failed. And Xerxes was so much in despair at the resurrection spell failing that he requested that she change his memory for him to forget that it ever even happened, which she obliged. But in this conversation, she has a realization: the only way this could have failed is if Evandrin wasn't really dead. And it's at this point that Laren admits that Evandrin volunteered to be the first one to use the astral ley light to go to the celestial plane. He left, but when he came back, he wasn't the same. And we know from a previous episode that this basically doomed him. Paisha also says basically that it seemed like they had sundered him from his soul and his body, and that there was some kind of separation that happened. in this whole conversation, Sarah is also trying to figure out, like, hey, what's going on with the city? What are the fail safes? Like, could the city stop descending? Like, what's happening? And Laren basically says, I know the answer to that question, but I'm not going to tell you because it's too important for us to stop now. Like, we have to land the city. We have to make sure that this apogee solstice is properly utilized, or else my chance is gone forever. Sarah is so pissed off at her selfishness that he like looks over the party and he's basically like, you guys suck. And he's like, I'm out. I'm going to go take care of mine. I don't know if we're going to survive the city, but I'm going to go look after my family. Flies off. He leaves. Really quickly, I'll just address what happens with him. He flies away, calls his son, basically says, hey, find your sister, come home ASAP. He goes to his office, and the artifacts from his desk are gone, presumably stolen by the cultists. He goes and knocks on his partner's door, Orwin, I think. Orwin, thank you. I'm thinking of our campaign.
Yeah.
Orwin is dead behind the desk and has been killed. And he holds a note, basically, and also 2 runes of recall addressed for Sarah. And it's basically like, hey, I hope you make it out of here. So he takes those 2 runes of recall. Brennan describes them as 2 tickets out of the city. And he flies to go home to get his family. Back at the Meridian Labyrinth, the remaining party is like, we need to go look at this tree. Like, this is like the central focus. So they go in, they look at the tree. They notice the little toy boat from Laren. It's translucent and it's stuck in the tree. And then they actually notice the... well, before I say that, Nidus starts going through the memories also of the memories that he stole. And long story short, he finds out that Master Cormorant had been inviting the Canalthi into the city. He also finds out that he sees a memory of Dean Hollow talking with a cultist, basically saying, like, the city must not land, similar to Vespin Chloris's comment earlier. And actually, this would have been before Sarah left, because Sarah actually, with an investigation, realizes that this isn't real. This is also a modified memory, and that what was actually said was Dean Hollow said the city must land, which is why they killed the helmswoman and destroyed the controls to stop the process from being reversed. Excuse me. So apologies. There's so many things happening here, so I'm getting a little confused. All that to say, as this whole conversation's happening, Laren sees the face of Evandrin in the tree, this translucent, horrific face, and she's like, I can get to him. I can help him. And she begins to cast Blight. Nidus, remembering the memories, or remembering the prophecy of destroying the tree and how that would be the end of the world, basically, is like, we can't do this. We can't destroy the tree. Like, there's things we don't understand here. Party basically goes to combat. Loquacious and Laren are basically against Nidus, who's trying to stop them. Loquacious tries to do his Fey presence to fear Nidus, but because he's near Xerxes, within 10 feet, he can't be feared. Nidus is going to cast Whole Person on both of them. They're going to both fail. Dwermer, the assistant, the Aord assistant bot, comes in, sees this all happening, tries to cast Finger of Death on Nidus, and it gets counterspelled by Xerxes. Another couple of rounds go by. Patia goes over to the tree, grabs the tree. It says that her eyes become like fire. Her hair flies back, behind her head. And she begins to see all of this. It's like a massive download of knowledge. And essentially what happens is she sees memories of Amir, her grandfather, and then the head of the Gao Drashari talking about the tree. And Amir being like, what's the tree? Like, what's it for? Just tell me. And the leader of the Gao Drashari being like, I can't tell you. And he actually sees a conversation between the Gao Drashari internally of them saying, like, we can't tell them what the tree's for. Loquacious is actually going to go grab her to try to pull her off. He's going to see I think it was like the leader of the Sealy court, being like, child, what are you doing? Like, you shouldn't be looking here. Like, there's something moving on your city. Which, by the way, not just on the city, in Nidus's memories that he pulled, they realized that there's also attacks happening all over Exandria, most notably on Cathmora below them. All this to say, Laren finally casts Blight, and the city, the tree gets hit by this. The center of it, by the trunk, sunders and splits with this fiery flame. It opens to reveal presumably a portal that Vespin Chloris with his skinned face steps through, and then the Lord of the Hells behind him, Asmodeus, who says, "Very good, my little puppet," and basically is like, "Home sweet home. It's been forever since I've been here." And that is where the episode ends of episode 3 of Calamity.
Yeah, jam-packed.
Holy crap. Again, if you're watching just the recap, click the link below, check the whole discussion. Wow, let's get into first things first.
Yeah.
Let's hey, did you like the episode, man?
I hated it. This series is trash. I'm not even gonna watch episode 4. No, man, this is freaking incredible. I mean, for those of you that follow us, you're gonna know I already basically said this, but I tweeted out that this is some of the best storytelling I've ever seen. I'm including that with TV shows. I'm including that with movies. I'm including that with books. Just best storytelling among the best storytelling I've ever seen. I feel like everyone's just firing off on all cylinders. Brennan's putting out a masterclass. Everyone is. All of their characters are just so relatable is not the right word, but like
human.
Yeah, human. There we go.
Yeah.
It's just been fantastic. I'm sad that we only have one episode left, and I'm sad that probably everyone's gonna die. But really good. What about you?
I freaking love this. It's so rare that I watch an episode twice. I watched the last episode twice. I watched this episode twice. I'm sure going to watch the next episode twice. Brennan is amazing. He's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he's good for everyone. I mean, for me, I'm a lore junkie. I love how he paints the word picture and also like takes data points to point to other, like I forgot to mention in the recap, he basically talks about how the Gouger Ashari would eventually become the Ashari. Like these little lore drops are so fun for me. And separate from him, the party's interactions, Paisha and Xerxes especially, when she reveals the modified memory, was insane to me. I thought it was so well acted between the two of them. I thought Marisha might be my all-time favorite, like just cast member in general. Separately, she's amazing in campaign 3. She was freaking phenomenal in this episode. I'm just right now, I'm just like, waxing poetically, as is what we naturally do in these episodes. But I thought it was amazing. My wife, who again's not typically a D&D Critical Role watcher, she didn't catch this episode, which we need to watch it. But I mean, she's been like totally blown away. And I agree with your tweet also. I think this is literally some of the best story content that you can get in a medium. And I think anyone who's never watched Critical Role or D&D in some format, I think these 4 episodes are going to be the perfect introduction to either Critical Role or just watching D&D online.
I agree. I've been thinking about that as well, as maybe like using this to introduce people, and not to get too off subject here. My only concern was with the massive amounts of lore and stuff that, we do have some context for. I wonder how like scary that is for somebody that like knows nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's a fair point, because like the second episode was extremely lore heavy, and my wife even was like, "I have no idea what's going on, but I'm here for it." I guess I could walk back what I just said slightly, in the sense of it's definitely better served if you have some connection to the Critical Role world. Episode 2 had a lot of lore. And dude, I totally forgot in the recap. There's so many like awesome moments that like I missed it in the recap, but I even forgot to mention them seeing the memory, realizing that the tree, as it was basically going through the ley lines of Exandria, as Avalier was basically gathering ether, the tree its blossoms were dropping like the sigils, or like the runes of protection across Exandria, and writing the names of presumably the deities who want to make their way back in. Pretty big, important detail, by the way, that I forgot to put in the recap. But yeah, I mean, stuff like that even would probably be over someone's head of like, okay, what's that mean? Like, what's going on? But forget it. I think it's great writing. I think it's all been great. I think it's been awesome interactions. I don't know, man. Yeah, I've loved it for sure.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I mean, obviously, we know where the story ends. It's basically we've reached that point of the Calamity, and we know it's only 4 episodes long. But my pipe dream kind of hope would be the Calamity is not a 1 week thing. It lasts 100 plus years. So
Yeah, I
it
think I
would
read
be
like 150 or something.
yeah. So it would be kind of
So
cool if maybe we get EXU Calamity part two, and maybe it's not with these characters, but maybe it's another story set within this 150-year period. Brennan comes back to DM. I don't know. At least that's my copium for like maybe we'll get some
I
more
could
of
see us
this.
getting like a one shot in the middle of the Calamity, a ragtag group just trying to survive, basically. I think the next big EXU story that makes sense to me would be maybe the end of the Calamity. Like,
Yeah, that'd be
because
cool.
I'm thinking about how do you match the stakes? Because think about this: watching the first episode, the tension was already palpable, the stakes were already there. Like we all knew this was the end of the world. And
Right.
as like the little threads were getting pulled, it was this, for me personally, it was a sinking feeling that was growing over the entire last 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Where now, like for example, when Sarah goes and sees
Orwin.
Orwin, I mean that hit right in the feels of just like, dude, this is it. Like this is literally it. This is the end of everything that we know it. Again, that's credit to the cast and credit to Brennan for what they've created. But I think in my mind, the only thing that matches the weight of the story implicitly would be the end of the Calamity. We know that the deities get sealed away, the prime deities leave. And by the way, I want to talk separately. I want to talk at another point in this conversation about how well I think this mini campaign might feed into campaign 3
Yeah.
of Critical Role as well. But other than that,
Yeah. Where to even begin, man?
combat was amazing. We could start there.
Yeah. I don't want to pronounce Shaq the dragon. I thought that was such a cool like flavor, and just I really love that, and such a cool spell too. I didn't even know that was a spell.
I like that you said that though, because this was the first time I've watched D&D with high level combat. Because I think the party's level 14, which typically would be like an end of campaign level. If you haven't ended earlier than that, if you're doing like a module, you might be level 10 or 11, 12. I think you said that campaign 2 ended around this range.
I think maybe a little higher, 14 to 16ish. I think.
Yeah, I guess campaign 1 they were higher level.
They were,
but they also started higher level though too. But point being though that I'm making is I'm so used to, all right guys, it's our first session, we're going to start at level 2 because level 1's really tough. Joe, what are you going to do? Eldritch Blast. And that's
Blast.
That's all they can do, and so it was really refreshing, and it kind of reinvigorated my excitement for D&D, because it was like, oh, there's this whole other post level 10 world, and really scary spells too. The Finger of Death, the excuse me, the Circle of Death.
Yeah, disintegrate.
That's right. So there was a lot of cool stuff for sure.
For sure. And one thing in particular during the combat that I want to bring up is again, I wish I knew the correct pronunciation of this. The Erinyes or Zartaza, the like beautiful woman demon.
I pronounce it Erinyes.
Erinyes, okay.
Which might be wrong, but I just do Aaron and yes, because that's how you spell it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that checks out to me. A super cool connection with her, for those of you that may or may not know, if you haven't, kind of dived into the source books and stuff. So Zartaza is, this Erinyes that serves Asmodeus, and we know she's collected Xerxes's blood. There is this, so there's vestiges of divergence, right? That are these really powerful artifacts. There's kind of like, in the same realm of powerful artifact, there are these things. I just forgot. I literally forgot what they're called. They're called Arms of Betrayers. And there's one called the Mace of the Black Crown, which is basically made from Zartaza. She like becomes the sentient weapon.
Cool.
And the fact that she said, I would be honored to fight by your side. I'm wondering if Xerxes becomes like this Lord of Hell, champion of Asmodeus. Might he wield the Mace of the Black Crown, which is Zartaza, and she'll be fighting by his side,
Yeah.
So I thought that was super cool, and I mean, may or may not happen, but she does become that mace. We know that much is going to happen. So I just thought that would be a really cool little like foreshadowing nod if that line like led to that.
I love these little like data points that pop up, like the connections that pop up. Because think about this, like the intentionality behind. Again, I just imagine Brennan and Matt like grabbing coffee and being like, okay, so who are like, I don't know, Matt in some of his previous like DM explanatory content has talked about his process for world building is like not just, which by the way is probably not functional for like any average DM out there. I think the average DM, it's like the party's like, we want to go in this door, and you're like, yeah, that door has Tom in it, and Tom is super racist, by the way. So the party's thrown off by him. You're just like making it up off the top of your head.
Right.
But Matt talks about how he even goes down granularly to like the motivations of like certain NPC characters and like what drives them. And so there was obviously a conversation on Zartaza and like, oh, let's have Zartaza be the person who, because it's too neat a tie for it to be coincidental.
Right.
But like you mentioned that, and then in the previous episode you talked about the Solar Knight, who gets brought up again in like a source book. But I don't know, I really appreciate those little details.
Yeah, they're really what make like the world feel alive,
Right.
So just thought that was just amazing. What else there was something else I wanted to bring up during the combat. Let me look at my notes really quick.
I love how the protection of good and evil popped up with Zartaza attacking. And it's like this orb that she just like bounces off of. That was really cool too.
That was awesome. I can't find it, so I'm not just gonna keep stalling here. But was there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Well, I said it in the recap, but I was really invested in this combat because of how much seemed stacked against them. And again, the roles that had to be made that didn't seem to be in their favor, and yet they made them. And then Britain, which by the way, a lot of his roles were above the board, or on the board rather, for everyone to see, which isn't always a typical DM strategy. I know I don't typically roll my dice in front of my players, and it's not to go against them. It's actually the opposite. It's sometimes I'm like, it's just kind of rough. Let me fudge.
Sometimes you gotta fudge the rolls a little bit.
Yeah, let me fudge just a little bit because I don't want someone to get murdered here.
Right.
That's just my personal style. But I liked a lot that he was doing it in front. And then also Mila's friend. So the way I interpreted it was that Mila's friend had basically always been this person, wolf in sheep's clothing, and it was like his true form. But the way you presented it makes a little bit more sense, because I was thinking like, how has this been the case? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Someone basically hiding in plain sight as him definitely makes more sense to me.
A disguised self or something, basically.
Right.
But that would be interesting if it always was, or at least maybe for a while had been, or something.
My data point, the reason I said that is because we had we also had other data points of I can't think of the guy's name, but the one that Xerxes, which I played a paladin in a previous campaign, and the divine smite spam is real, where he hits him for like 70 something.
Yeah.
It was like an armorer or like someone, but they basically ask, are these people being possessed? And Brennan says like, no, these are basically people who have been secretly cultists this entire time, and they're all over the city. Basically, the city's been infiltrated, and so that was my data point with Mila's friend. Was maybe there was never a Mila's friend; it was always this devil charading as him.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know.
that not that this is important, but Findris Lightbreaker was the person you're referring to. He was like the sellsword,
Yeah,
who
that's right.
Xerxes was fighting. Um, but yeah, and so during the combat, I thought it was really interesting with the Calyx requesting energy thing, and then the devils like start vomiting blood or whatever.
Yeah, because they don't give it energy.
Okay, that was my thought. And then when I was going through making my notes for the recap, I I confused myself. I was like, is that what happened? Because logically to me, we know that the Calyx is preventing things from coming over, right? So these devils that
Right.
maybe shouldn't be here, if the Calyx gets energy, they vomit because it's like fighting against them.
Right.
So that checks out. But I too thought that she didn't give it energy.
Yeah, because she gets the call that's basically like we're getting the request, and she says like don't do it, like cut it.
Right. So to me, that would means they would like be empowered, not hurt.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely like a detail there that's still fuzzy about like how the tree has been interacting. It's clear. It's clear that the tree has been basically, and I think we said this as much in our previous episode, that the tree was like the cork in the bottle, keeping things in, I guess, or keeping other thing out. So yeah, it doesn't quite make sense that once it was requesting power, they said no. That because I would have had the same reaction as you did. So yeah, I don't know. There must be another detail we don't get there.
Yeah, so that led me to believe maybe that did get the energy, but it seems like Laren wouldn't have wanted that to happen. So I don't know. But yeah, so if anyone else has any clarity on that, let us know.
Well, how are they there? Also, like how are the devils there? Like how's the devil there? How's the Arianyes there? Because these are creatures of the nine hells. I guess the tree of names, it specifically grabs like the names of the deities and keeps them out. So like maybe these wouldn't be as forcefully kept out. But it was also mentioned that the devil hadn't stepped foot on Exandria in their lifetime. So
right. So I take it that like the door was blasted open. You know, the prison. And so maybe because of that, there's like little things floating through the cracks is my best guess. Because I don't know. It'd be interesting. I don't know if we'll get an answer to that specifically, but I was wondering the same thing. But I think it's probably kind of what you're saying. It's more keeping the big bads out, and maybe these smaller things are kind of able to come through now during this weekend phase or whatever. But yeah, I was wondering that.
okay.
Yeah, I think maybe it'll come to me as we keep going. Okay. But there was something else, but I can't find it in my notes. But so
yeah, I'll just say reverse gravity was really cool. The casting of fireball was really cool. I think the party had 2 fireballs casted on them, which is really crazy. And then the resilient orb, or she homebrewed named it, Porco's orb or whatever. That was so cool. Was so freaking cool.
And what an awesome homebrew by Brennan in that moment to think of that interaction.
Yeah, I think that's what makes a great DM, because he basically moved away from the stat block and basically said, this could be a really awesome moment for my player. And it was incredibly epic. I'm taking a lot of notes from Brennan. I mean, Matt is amazing, but Brennan has come out of nowhere. I'd never followed any of his content, and I could easily watch an entire campaign from him. Like he's stupid good. It's so crazy how good he is.
He's incredible. And on that subject, a lot of people in our comments and stuff have, because we've mentioned we haven't watched any of D20, so they've been telling us we should check it out. Maybe we should even
I'm down,
talk about it, do a series on whatever little mini campaign we watch or something.
That'd be perfect. Yeah, for sure. We're grabbing the critters. Let's go ahead and grab the D20ers. Too. I don't know if that's what they refer to themselves as. One of them's like, we don't. Please don't.
Don't ever say that again.
Yeah, you're out. So, what else?
So I mean,
some of it's a little self-explanatory, I guess. Like Patia and Xerxes. I mean, that was just an awesome reveal. The comment that she makes on how we sundered, like we split his soul from his body. To me, the way I took that was that just like the boat, once he left and came back, he didn't all come back, and maybe the face
because he couldn't, right? Because the
right. So maybe the face that they see is like his soul stuck in the tree.
that's my understanding as well. So just to paint a picture of what actually happened and help me walk through this. But so Evandrin, being really close with Laren and the First Knight of Avalier, volunteers to help her with
Right.
what she's trying to do. Basically, is the guinea pig to get teleported first, right?
Right.
So they do it. Presumably, it's successful. He then comes back, and that's when he gets sick.
Right.
Xerxes does everything he can to try to heal him. Nothing works, and he eventually just dies or fades away, whatever the terminology was. Then Xerxes goes to Patia. It's like true resurrection. It doesn't work.
Right.
Then, all right, I can't take this. Modify my memory.
Right.
Boom. And now his soul's stuck in the astral mesh.
Yeah, that sounds right.
For your money, did Laren or did Patia know what Laren did? Like, did Patia know? Yeah,
I think so, because after they do their experiment with the rudder, after they use like the tuning fork of the solar bow, they use it to calibrate the machine, which was an interesting detail, by the way. It was interesting that Laren thought, I need that because the settings were wrong, when actually it seemed to have worked originally. It's like we said, unbeknownst to her, she didn't know the tree was basically blocking entry back. But in that whole discovery in the second episode, Patia, surprisingly, everyone's surprised to see that she has been fully involved in this. And she's like, yeah, like this is what we're trying to do. And so I think one of two things. I think either she's known about it all along, and it even feeds into Asmodeus's comment of your friends are lying to you, and that Patia knew what really happened. Or it could be that she was so sharing in the pain of Xerxes and modifying his memory, went to Laren to be like, what has happened here? Like, what's been going on?
Yeah.
And then maybe Laren brought her in at that point. But I'm assuming she either before or after knows. What do you think?
I assumed so, and so I thought so, but then it kind of was brought into doubt since the context we got was basically only that true resurrection spell. So I just wasn't sure if the implication was that she knew what really happened to him or not. Because presumably, I guess she wouldn't know that it wouldn't work, but presumably if she knew, she would kind of know that the true resurrection spell wasn't going to work. But maybe she wouldn't have. Maybe she would have thought it could maybe work still. I guess they don't really know what happened to him at that point.
Yeah, I think maybe when the spell failed, she knew that this should have worked. And so maybe that's when she went to Laren and was like, okay, he's clearly not, he's only mostly dead. So what's going on here? Which is really, the whole thing's really tragic, honestly.
100%. And I wonder, I guess we don't, Evandrin could have been sent anywhere because they didn't have the solar bow at that point. So he may have not gone to the celestial plane or whatever we want to call it. He might have gone somewhere very bad, He
could have gone to the realm of the nine hells, and which would explain Asmodeus using his likeness.
Well, he would have to have gone to the prison.
True.
Wherever that is, which maybe that's the nine hells, who knows?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, maybe he did, and that's how Asmodeus kind of set these things in motion. One more quick thing before I want to talk about that a little bit. But I thought it was interesting, and you mentioned this in the recap, that there was kind of this implication made around the true resurrection spell being kind of forbidden or not, or heavily guarded or something, which I thought was really interesting in this age of Arcanum. I wonder why that was, or why that is. I would think that,
I think she says that it's druidic, is what she said. Like it was a druidic ritual, which makes more sense in my mind because it wouldn't be forbidden by the mages of Avalier. It would be forbidden by the druids who are absolutely like a foil to the mages of Avalier. You know, the mages of Avalier are, you know, there's no mountain that we can't climb. Like, of course, and it's the whole reason. It's the whole reason for them being left in the dark on the tree is because if we told you, you would take advantage of it. So I'm assuming maybe they, shockingly enough, did not have this magic. They didn't know the spell. The druids did, and Portia.
That makes sense.
You know, that's how it makes sense in my mind, because I agree with you. It wouldn't quite make sense. I mean, the mages would be like, yeah, let's just resurrect anybody. Like, why not? So I don't know.
Yeah, that checks out. Plus, maybe it was just kind of flavor for the fact that what is Pasha? Oh, is a wizard?
Yeah, right.
Because I don't think they can learn that spell. So maybe that was also kind of just like the flavor for
right. Yeah,
how a wizard was doing it. But yeah, okay. So now, and I'm just kind of jumping around. So you
let's do it.
Help direct me if you want to.
Yeah.
So speaking of the whole Evandrin potentially, you know, inspiring Asmodeus to do this plan, clearly Asmodeus has been pulling strings, has been manipulating Xerxes specifically as the blood, like he's the chosen, you know, as referenced the blood of the chosen. What is he the chosen of? The chosen of the one that's kind of knocking over the dominoes that's going to allow the tree to be destroyed and him to walk through. And that seems like the obvious answer, but I'm wondering, you know, Xerxes wasn't personally the one who did it, but maybe splitting hairs. I guess none of this would be possible without Xerxes kind of in the middle of everything. So maybe that's why he's the chosen one, or if there's something else.
Well, they got his blood though, so there's something more to it than him just pushing over dominoes. I mean, they need his blood for some reason.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe that was part of her turning into that sentient weapon, or if it is maybe something else, some other ritual that needs to be done.
I think there's something we don't know yet related to him. We do know. I know we talked in the last episode. I really liked last episode in the sense of like basically making the black and white morality of the betrayer gods and the prime deities as much more gray. I do think Asmodeus, it'd be unfair to say he was fully lying. It could be that he was being totally honest, and what we see now is someone super pissed off. You know, and it's maybe even why Xerxes pleaded like, "We're your children, like don't forget us." And Asmodeus ironically says, "I won't forget you till the end of time," basically. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting because it's like, okay, what is what role does he still have to play? Because he hasn't, like you said, he hasn't done anything yet. He obviously is being manipulated. We said it since episode 1 that maybe the dream was very carefully, cleverly used to manipulate him. I guess we'll see in the next episode if he's going to just like he'd have good reason to get pissed off. I mean, everyone's basically lied to him and screwed him over. I mean, they took the love of his life and then they lied to him about it. So
yeah, but
I don't know.
The interesting bit is the plane shifting portion was a complete lie, but at least the modified memory, you know, he was
true.
He volunteered for that portion of it, but he still has plenty of reasons to be mad.
Unless she did know what really happened. And yes, she was doing the modified memory at his request, but also wasn't telling him the full story.
Yeah. I think it seems like that he may become like Herald of Asmodeus and like one of his generals, right? Right. That seems like it could easily be the case. I just don't know if he would do that willingly. So I'm wondering maybe Asmodeus has the power to just kind of like puppet him, or maybe does he get so pissed off about you know, I just can't see Xerxes like turning on all of humanity in that way.
Yeah, and he also has a son too. I mean,
yeah, so either he doesn't become a herald of Asmodeus, or I think maybe he can be fully controlled or something, because maybe, you know, he's lent himself too much to to Asmodeus or something. Um, but quick timeline again. So we know that Vesp and Chloris did this event, which I want to talk more about that in a second. That opened the door, right?
Yeah.
So for my money, it's since that moment, which was a couple weeks ago, I think, in universe. That's probably when the dream started and all these pieces starting falling into place, ultimately leading to where we are now.
Right.
Which, because, I imagine since the door was broken, Asmodeus now did have some level of control, level of influence over the world, even though they couldn't fully break into it yet. But Vespin, what do you think happened there? Because surely he didn't perform this ritual. Because Asmodeus wouldn't have had influence before the door was open. So it's not as if Asmodeus puppeted Vespin to open the door, right? Maybe he did, but to me he didn't. So
he calls him his puppet. So I mean, I think it works both ways. I think a neat and tidy way would be that Asmodeus manipulated him into doing this. How? Who knows? Maybe the betrayer gods do have like a microcosm of influence. I think the more simple explanation is all the lore we got in the first episode, which is the matron of ravens ascended, and everyone since then has always wanted to do the same thing. Full of ego and hubris, he decides, well, why would we go up? Why wouldn't we go down? And basically performs this ritual, goes down, opens the door, so to speak. And then from then on is the puppet, or, maybe in his mind, I like it this way better, in the sense of, I think he maybe thought he could become a betrayer god, and instead, judging by his skinned off face, it's always made comments about how people who do this ritual, it never ends well for them. It seems to line up. I mean, he's mutilated, doesn't seem very happy. I'm assuming he went down, opened the door, and rather than taking over, he got taken over. He got dominated, and not literally. I mean, I think he's now a steward of Asmodeus.
Yeah, so I agree completely. That's my explanation for things, is that he wasn't influenced before, but in his hubris was like, I'm gonna do this. And as we know, like, the Matron of Ravens defeated the previous god of death. Right. We don't know the details of what that means or whatever, but that happened. So I'm guessing he got into a duel with Asmodeus and got his ass kicked.
Right.
And then since has been puppeted. I've seen a lot of chatter about Laren's responsible for the Calamity. It wasn't Vespin, it was her all along. And I was like, she played a part.
I don't know, man. Don't take this from me. What did I say in the very first episode? Did I say in the first episode when we talked about her introduction and her being like, this is my moment, this is it? I literally said verbatim, I said, all right, it'd be really interesting if we've always known Vespin as like the dude who started the Calamity, and really it was Laren. We got some real mad scientist vibes. Sure enough, here we are, episode 3. Asmodeus comes out of the tree. If you watch her, Bria's face, she's like, shoot, crap. You're like, oh man, I made a big uh-oh. I made a huge mistake. And I think that, paired with Loquacius's message on Laren tried to save everyone. He actually has a very clever comment earlier. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but there's a comment about like history or something. Oh, I think he's talking to Laren, and Laren's like, history will remember me well. And he's like, no, history isn't real. History is whatever. It's the whole line we've always known. History is written by the winners, right? And so I think that little detail of him being like, Laren tried to save us, I think it does remember her well. But absolutely, I think she is the one responsible. She could have stopped the ship from descending. She could have, basically when Evandrin died, been like, this is way beyond us. But she is a crazy mad scientist person who's like, it was all worth it, even if it killed my friend. Even if, this has to happen. It's my right. It's like not just my right. It's like my whole life has been building to this moment. So yeah, I would blame her. Tell me why I shouldn't.
Everything you said is right and factual and true, but I'm gonna push back just a little bit because I just don't think it's fair to lump it all on her. Like, this without Vespin, none of this happens either, though. Like
True.
he's the one that blasted open the door. Without Xerxes, none of this happens.
Right.
So, yes, she's the one that blighted the tree, but I do think it was a really nice touch that, the reason she finally did was because it attacked her friends. She hadn't done it before then. So I like to think that, it was love that ultimately caused her to do it and not the ego of like, I have to do this with the ship. I mean, probably she would have done it anyway, but like that was the trigger.
I just don't buy it. I think people in general were notoriously not self-aware. I think, because her friends got like impaled or something. I think that's a very neat and tidy. That's the reason that she probably even believed, but subconsciously, how many times has she talked about how much she hates the arboreal calyx and how it's siphoning her energy, how it's like basically threatening her life's work. And so I think she's always hated the tree. Not saying she purposely did this, because again, I don't think we're always so self-conscious. I think she saw an opportunity to destroy it and was like, screw that thing, I'm getting rid of it. And ultimately chose her. And I think it's fair what you say. I mean, she's not wholly responsible. I mean, there's some shared, we could probably fairly say it's majorly Vespin Chloris, since he's obviously super evil. But, I think she's partly responsible. I think the only person not responsible is maybe Sarah, who's like the only person who seems to have his hands clean. But then we said last episode, maybe his flaw is that he's too close, that he's unwilling to be objective with his friends. But I don't know.
But no, agreed. And I also just like that, that we knew what we were getting into with this story. Like this was happening no matter what, essentially, So props to Abria for being the one to do it, And I think it was open to where it didn't. Obviously, we were gonna reach the destination one way or another, but I think we could have gotten there a couple different ways. So props to her for like being true to the character and true to the story, and actually causing the calamity. Being the one that finally kind of breaks that final wall.
I real quick, I do like what you just said there, of the sense of like, I was wondering what was the party in the know of before the episode. Like, did Brennan sit down with the Bria, be like, you're the one who's going to do it, this is what's going to happen no matter what? I don't think that happened. I think it's like you said, it's like playing Clue. They all had a reason to have done it. And that's the master craftsmanship behind this whole campaign, is I think they all had a reason to do it. Think about going to like a murder mystery party. Like, you're all given the reason why you would have done it. You're all given the insight of what that someone else doesn't know. And I think they all had that opportunity for sure.
Yeah. Which kind of that all comes together with Lou saying like, man, I thought I was going to be you, referring to Abria, like I thought I was going to be the one that was going to take this down,
right?
But that damn prophecy, which is so good. One other moment, I just love that his character really clutched onto that, and like, his whole life being this pirate captain that kind of like was born from nothing and reached these heights. Like, he wants to save this city. Like, this is his dream. This is everything he always strived for. And that prophecy, like, even though he wants it to be false and thinks it's false, he can't take that risk of it maybe being true. So he's gonna try to stop these things from happening. And one other like really nice detail, I don't remember exactly when it happened, but at one point, Lou Nidus asked Brennan, like, I look at the stars, because there was some line about the stars in the prophecy. So I like that he was like, even before that tree moment, Nidus was looking for these signs to see, is this the prophecy? Is this coming true?
I love how the prophecy, I don't want to say it was subtle. It wasn't subtle, but it was such a, it wasn't how do I say this? The prophecy was out there, and it almost seemed, I can't find the phrasing I want to use, but it just sat with him. You could tell it ate away at him. And then when he got to that moment, him just realizing what was happening. I love that you mentioned that. I mean, and Lou did an amazing job. Here we are again. I mean, the whole cast is freaking amazing. They're so good. They obviously, I guess we can assume they had an episode 0 together, or they seemed really, because there were a couple of comments too of like, them saying like, you're my best friend, like, and they obviously know each other well, and you felt that seeing them interact with one another. I don't know where I'm going with this, but
No,
anyway, yeah.
they obviously did their homework and their
Yeah.
background. And there was one other moment during the episode that I think Sam maybe said, "Yeah, you gave us those flowcharts or like the informational packets." So essentially, they were all given like a lore
Right.
document. And he's like, "I didn't know it was just because you were gonna use all these people against us." I think it was when the Canolfi came into the battle.
Yeah,
He
right.
made that comment. So clearly, and I mean, I think everyone pretty much assumed this, but yeah, definitely they were given that, you know, they did a lot of work on these characters, and there was a lot of like established background that they developed. I am almost certain in saying. So yeah, you know, deep stuff, but great stuff,
Bro. Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask about the moments that happened. Well, I'll say one thing first, then I'll say that I want to talk about Asmodeus coming into Exandria. But before I do that, I do think it's interesting. I saw a comment that, and there's been this theme through the entire series of arrogance, ego, hubris, and it's been really well delivered. I think it's been not too on the nose. It's just been a very constant theme. And you have the Galdrashari, who are presumably the goodest guys in the sense of they're trying to protect this mountain where I think it was Rakan and Kalmort, two of the primordials who were never killed but who were sealed away.
Mm-hmm.
I probably should have mentioned that in the recap, but are sealed in Mount Yagora. They let them take the top of the mountain, and we have the conversation internally between the leader and one of his underlings that's like, we can't tell them, we can't trust them with them, whatever. And so again, you assume like these are the goodest of the guys, but I saw a really great comment on Reddit of someone saying, like, no, like they play into the theme of arrogance. I'm basically supplanting my phrasing. They basically said they're just as much to blame because they didn't tell them. In my mind, it's again, it plays into the theme of ego and arrogance. Is we know better than the wizards. We can't trust them.
Right.
We're right, so we can't tell them about the tree's true purpose. And maybe they were right in that, but maybe there should have been like a, you know, maybe a select few of the mages like Amir should have known, because it's the life and death of Exandria that we're talking about here.
Yeah, it was their hubris that we can handle this on our own. We don't need anybody else. We'll take care of it. 100% agreed with that. The Galdrashari.
I did a good job reading it off Reddit.
The Galdrashari, I think, definitely have their culpability in all of this happening as well. Just this is kind of a quick aside, but wanted to mention it too. Just how cool that the tree's purpose was like this planetary scale protection spell that, you know, worked because Avalier's traveling all across the ley lines and stuff. I thought that was such a cool explanation, and like flavoring for how the tree was accomplishing what we, you know, presumed it to be accomplishing. But just such a nice way to do it.
The detail I didn't get was the tree grown by the Galdrashari? Was it in what's the name of the town below Mount Yagora? The Druid town. Yeah, Tormunda. Was it a tree there that they picked up and put in Avalier? Because like, here's my question: the tree's only been there 119 years before, but in Avalier, right after the Matron of Ravens.
Well, rather, it was there before that.
The Calyx has only been there, right? So my question is, 240 years prior, what was protecting Exandria?
Nothing, I guess. You know, I think
but I guess they were locked away though, because I was trying to figure out why they weren't roaming before then, but they had been locked away previously. So I guess that explains it.
And it's not just. I think it serves more than just keeping the betrayer gods out. It's keeping anything, presumably, from another plane of his existence out. So I'm sure it's preventing other threats too that aren't necessarily like deity level, but you know, whatever level you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, I assume they either created it or maybe it was just a tree that they enchanted to perform this ritual. You know, I don't know, but magic tree.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my second question is, what do you think happened in those final moments? The tree is sundered. I guess the barrier's destroyed. Is Asmodeus entering Avalier now? Did he just step foot? I mean, are they looking at a gargantuan? Because he's not really described much. Like, what did you visualize in that last few moments?
Yeah, I mean, the tree splitting, Vespin climbing out. If Asmodeus is there, I think he's obviously like he's not in his, maybe he is his like full true form. Maybe it's, I'm assuming deities. We were told that they walk amongst us in the Age of Arcanum. Like I'm sure that they can control themselves to be humanoid size if they want to. So if he is there, I'm assuming he's more of a normal size.
Yeah.
But we'll see, I guess. But yeah, I basically, the seal's broken. They're climbing through was, I think, like that is literally what was happening, but also kind of metaphorically now, like all bets are off. Like he's climbing into this world now. Now, if that's literally happening through the tree right this moment, I don't know. But maybe, with deity powers, he could probably do whatever he wants.
Yeah, give me your predictions on this last episode.
Well, one step back before, if I may, when they're getting like the visions from the tree, one thing I wanted to mention or talk about was Loquacious. And what's fun, I'm so mad I didn't put this together, but I actually, before this week's episode aired, one of our comments on the past episode was someone pointing out, hey, Loquacious's last name is Sealy, like the Sealy court in the Feywild. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah,
duh.
right.
I had never put that together. So when he touches the tree and sees, I wrote down whatever that person's name was.
It was the War Queen, right, of the Burning Veil.
Elminor, which I don't know if that is that the same person.
Yeah, presumably the same person that wants Fernback.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
So Loquacious Sealy, like, is he like one of the most important and powerful members of the Feywild, or at least part of that family? Or is Sealy just like a generalized name? I don't know, but
it's gotta be something general, because you would assume, because Laren says something like, you won't live to see the next one, implying like he'll die of old age. I don't know if that's like a thing, like where if you're not in the Feywild, because time is different, that you can age and die. It's like a Lord of the Rings, Arwen and what's his face?
Aragorn.
Yeah, thank you. The whole thing's very confusing for me in the sense of like, is he? Let me just, instead of being long-winded, I think it's like a general name, but I don't know. It's a really interesting connection for sure.
Yeah, and so I just thought it was, he sees like Elminor. And she clearly, I don't know, I think it's a she. She clearly knows like a lot that's happening. She's like, something's crawling on the face of your world. Don't let her find the names. So why does she know so much? Like, is it because she's this archfey and is from a different plane of existence? So maybe knows about this powerful worldwide spell that's preventing, I don't know. It's just because Paisha was just seeing like memories and stuff, but Loquacious like got like a Jedi mind link to Elminor.
Yeah. So is it referring to Paisha not finding the names?
I was going to ask you that too, because Elminor says like, don't let her find the name or something to that effect. Do not let her find the names. So I was going to ask you that same question. My best guess is that, because Paisha is currently one accessing this knowledge, maybe if she finds out what truly is happening, maybe she'll destroy it. And so maybe that's what Elminor meant, like, hey, like, stop this before it goes further. Or maybe it means something entirely else that we're still missing.
I gotta ask, why haven't any prime deities swooped down and been like, yo, leave this tree alone, it's kind of a big deal, it's really important? Like, I'm just surprised that there's not like, where's the failsafe for, keeping the tree from being destroyed? Which I guess there was the comment Brennan made on like, mortals are forgetful, and that maybe over the last 120 years, people have sort of forgotten the importance behind this tree.
Yeah, and maybe I mean I don't really know to the like I don't think deities are omnipotent
Right.
or
It's not like God, like the
right.
Christian God, but
It's not
like
like so they might not know that like this is happening until maybe like right now. Maybe like now they can feel the disturbance in the
yeah.
thing, which we know the calamity is a battle between them all, so they're probably on the way soon, if not already, and shit's about to hit the fan. But
And
yeah,
wasn't there a comment too about how Asmodeus isn't the only betrayer god who's because even before the comment on Kathmora, there's something like there was a comment about like there were maybe I'm misremembering, but like maybe there were other betrayer gods who were doing schemes elsewhere in Exandria.
yeah, I mean, because presumably if the door was blasted open, all of them have been in this intermediary plane or whatever. So if Asmodeus has had some influence, they all presumably have, right?
Right.
So unless whatever Vespin did only blasted Asmodeus out, um, I guess we don't really know. But yeah, now all bets are off. So yeah, all of the betrayer gods are seemingly free to enter. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if there are other machinations in play from other betrayer gods. But
Hmm.
yeah, to cycle back to what you originally asked me, I don't know what to expect from this last episode because I mean, this it would have been slightly unsatisfying, but the show could have ended where it ended, like entirely. Like that's Calamity started. Like tree's gone, Asmodeus is here. That is how the Calamity started. Thanks. See you next time. I'm glad we're getting another episode. But I think it's just going to be like how some form of combat, obviously, and then can we escape? Like, can Sarek get to his kids and give him the runes of recall? And how many people can we get off this city before it? Oh, okay. Rewind a little bit. Sorry. You mentioned it. Raushan and Kamort, the primordials trapped in the mountain. We know that on the one Eldritch battery that was successfully destroyed, their names were written on it.
Right. I forgot that
So,
detail. Yeah.
and we also know that, the whole thing of like, don't let the city land, but really they wanted to let the
Right.
city land. We know that wasn't necessarily tied to the tree because the city has not landed and
Tree's destroyed.
Asmodeus is out,
Right.
presumably. So this may be something else entirely, and I think it may be the city landing and the energy of the replenishment is maybe to break Raushan and Kamort out. So that's my best guess for what happens if the city lands, which maybe since they've saved most of the batteries, it won't anymore. But um, that has to be my guess of what's going on there. Um, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Maybe yeah, they're trying to break their homies out of prison. I don't know.
Yeah,
I need to go check the content to see what's written about both of those primordials, because they presumably don't get sealed away at the end of the calamity, right?
I'm not sure actually. I wanted to look into this as well because my understanding, and it's clearly wrong, I guess, but because they mentioned in the schism most of the primordials were killed. These two were imprisoned, right? Which is not to say there couldn't also be a third and fourth option for specific primordials that maybe weren't killed or whatever.
Right.
But I thought that different primordials were locked away to their own plane, and that is what created like that's why there's an elemental plane of fire because one of them was and that's why there's an elemental plane of water and et cetera, et cetera. um
I thought these were the only two that weren't killed, but instead were sealed away. But
right,
I'm
that's what they said, but I wasn't
okay. Yeah,
sure,
I'm
so I don't know
trying
how
to
to
find.
reconcile those two things.
Yeah, I'll have to Google it later. Well, I'm just just to beat a dead horse. We need a source book. We need a calamity source book. And I do want to say this before we do predictions for the last episode.
Yeah,
Um, it's almost raised the stakes for me for campaign 3 of wondering, like, we know planes are shifting. We know
it's
planes
a
are shifting.
solstice
It's
for
a
certain.
solstice.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
it
could be an apogee solstice,
could be.
which I think would be really great tie-in. We know that some things are trying to come to Exandria. We saw the Ono Plateau, the Fire Sigil. And so are the deities coming back? Maybe? I don't know. But it feels like there's a detail there that is going to feed into maybe the big bad of campaign 3. I'm not sure. But
yeah, I agree.
because I mean, how long does Matt's story go? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe they do this until they're 80 and then they're like, all right, we're done. I would guess. I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know. So I see it more as a swan song, I guess, but I don't know.
What do you mean? Like,
well, I just see after campaign 3. I just wonder, does the cast continue with the campaign 4, or is it like, hey, yeah, we want to do something different now. We want to try something different now. Which I don't know if they would. Like I said, they could just, we're making buku's money. This is a great brand. Let's just keep doing it forever. But, it could also be a trilogy, and it's like, let's do something else now. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think campaign 3 is the end of it. But it could be the end of, maybe we leave Exandria for campaign 4 and there's a whole new world with a whole new sets of stories or whatever. So in that sense, maybe it is the swan song of Exandria, which would be interesting. But yeah, I think definitely, if not a direct line of influence from what's happening in the Calamity to what's happening in C3, I think there's definitely going to be the ripple effects that are relevant. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this is an apogee solstice that we're dealing with in C3, or if it's just a normal one, and what the hell is going on, if it's related to these same deities, or maybe just some other locked away malevolence that's trying to return.
Well, Ruidus hasn't been mentioned at all, which I don't know if that's intentional or not. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, it would be interesting if maybe Ruidus is... So we know all the gods, including the good ones, locked them all behind the divine gate.
Yeah, what is that, by the way? Because that was mentioned a couple of times.
So
this is way beyond my experience with Critical Role. What is the divine gate?
So this is just general world lore. You're familiar with the schism. That was a battle. What we're dealing with now is the Calamity, which is the next massive conflict. At the end of the Calamity, the gods, the good ones, are like, this isn't working. So they gather all of themselves and the bad ones, and they basically create what's called the Divine Gate. So they all permanently separate from Exandria. Like mentioned earlier, the gods can walk amongst us during the Age of Arcanum. Like the gods were freely on Exandria doing what they want. That's no longer a thing. Their only influence is via empowering clerics and empowering, so they still have influence in that way, but they cannot appear on the face of the planet anymore because of the Divine Gate. So it's kind of similar to the prison, with the tree keeping people out, but I just don't think there's no tree that's enabling it. It's just we've locked ourselves away from this place forever type of thing.
Is it a physical gate, or is it just a metaphorical?
I don't think it's barrier? a physical gate. Now there may be something that I don't know, okay. But yeah, and I know that it possibly could be broken down. I mean, if it was put up, it could be broken down, right? But yeah, so that's what it is. But anyway, so to cycle back, we know the gods are behind that, but maybe Ruidus was where something else was imprisoned, maybe a primordial, or maybe some other entity, and maybe that's... We don't know what Ruidus is. That was just a shot in the dark. But maybe at the end of the Calamity, something's imprisoned and it's Ruidus, and maybe now we're dealing with that in C3 or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Predictions. Who lives? Who dies?
Oh man, I have to think everyone dies. I mean, I hope Sarah. We know Sarah has. We know Sarah has dies. 2 runes of recall, which are keyed to the mom, I believe, was what was said in Orwin's note, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So presumably those are pop it and you're going to teleport somewhere else. So presumably he's giving those to his kids.
Right.
And then what's he going to do? Is he going to be I helped make this mess, let me go see what I can do about it? Or is he going to hightail and fly it out of there?
Just fly away. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
I think I like want him to do that so that he lives, but for my money, I feel like he's gonna dive back into the fray to try to, help, if not his friends, just other people.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like the most moral character, so I could see him definitely doing something like that for sure.
I'm trying to think of, well, okay, Xerxes maybe doesn't die because I'm still he might. I feel like he might become,
Oh man.
the
Yeah.
herald of Asmodeus. But other than that, I think probably now are they all gonna die in this next episode? I don't know, but I think they're all doomed in very
Yeah.
short fashion, at least. But maybe not. I mean, if we do get some other little mini campaigns set during various times in the Calamity, it would be cool to see some of them again. So, this is. I mean, I haven't answered your question at all, but I definitely think that we're going to see some people die on Thursday. What about you? You have any specific predictions for who's going to bite it?
I think Laren's dead. I think Nidus is dead. I think Paisha's dead. I think Xerxes is going to become evil. Sarah, I want to believe he will make it out, but I think the way you described it is kind of how I see it. He's going to get his kids out, and then he's going to die. I could see Loquacious maybe escaping to the Feywild. Maybe.
Now, you said Xerxes becomes evil. Do you think he turns, or do you think he is controlled in some way?
I think he'll turn.
Oh.
I mean, it's not very clean and tidy in my head because the fact that he has a kid, that's a pretty big motivator not to be evil.
Maybe it's used against him, though. Maybe it's like, we'll protect, like, I'll spare your son if you serve me or something.
I mean, yeah, that's a really great way to think of it for sure. So, yeah, I don't know. All I know is I keep hoping it's Thursday.
I know.
I'm gonna get some popcorn and get ready for this because I think it's gonna be incredible. I'm really excited for it.
Me too.
So, all right, let us know in the comments what you guys thought of the episode, your theories, thoughts, and we'd love to respond. Don't forget, we're also on Twitter at the Pixelists. Will, what do you want to do for our thumbnail?
That's a good question. I don't know. Do you have...
maybe like an maybe like one of us is casting blight, the other one's going like ooh, like or something like that, or
sure, yeah. Works for me. What do you want to do? Since it was your idea.
Doesn't matter to me.
You got to pick.
I'll be the blighter.
Okay.
I'm gonna do my Emperor Palpatine lightning. Are you ready? All right. I think it also doubles as Vespin Chlora's clawing out, by the way.
Hey, there we go.
So, options. All right. Well,
perfect.
That's all we got. And we'll be excited to talk about this next episode. Grab your tissues because some people are going to die.
Yeah.
And we'll see you after Thursday.
See y'all.